Jody Spiro has wide and deep experience across the private sector, the public sector, nonprofit sector. She's worked with Citibank, she's worked with the Department of Education, she's worked with the Soros Foundation, all focused on this idea of rethinking leadership and leadership support. So she recognized a vacuum, really, in the public sector, really understanding what leadership was and how leadership could move a school. And she did this, she spearheaded reform initiatives in districts across the country with her work as the Director of Education Leadership at the Wallace Foundation. So with Jody at the helm, this foundation made monumental investments, $400 million, investing in understanding and promoting the leadership pipeline and a whole series of research on this work. Now the results, which we always want to see results there, I think they're impressive. She not only invested in research, but they've actually transformed how we understand great leadership. And furthermore, half of the states across the United States have made some sort of legislative change around the hiring, developing, and promoting of leadership because of this work. So again, I want to say we are incredibly proud to name Jody Spiro as this year's Teaching Matters 2014 Champion of Education and Innovation. And Jody, I hope you would join me at the stage. I think it goes like this.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Thank you so much. I feel like Serena Williams. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynette. This is such an honor. And it's heavy, too. I wondered if in accepting this award, because later on we're going to talk a lot about leadership, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about teaching, if that's okay. The first thing, of course, I wanted to say is that was a lovely introduction, but we all know that it's never one person and it's always a team. And at Wallace, we have an incredible team of people, some of whom are here today and get to eat lunch, and others of whom are back in the office working. But I wanted to make sure that everybody met Jessica Schwartz, who's our Senior Communications Officer, Rochelle Herring, who's our Program Officer in Education Leadership, Nicholas Pelzer, Program Officer in Education Leadership, Carolina Velasquez, our trusty administrative assistant, and we all know that they are really the people who run the world, and Aisha Ilyusisov, who is our special projects consultant. So that's just a sample of the folks at Wallace who make all this work. And again, I could not be more grateful to Carmen Farina, who is here there she is, who's here today, and we will have a great conversation with Jane Williams. And all I wanted to do is, I thought about really what I wanted to say and why I'm so deeply honored to have this award, and that's because, first and foremost, I am a teacher, and I think that teachers are the heroes of our society, and I could not agree more with the mission of Teaching Matters. And so I just wanted to give you a little anecdote about something that happened to me several years ago that I think illustrates the point. And the point for me is, so I was doing for many years that exhausting list of places I've worked that Lynette read made me quite tired, but I did work all those places. And among some of the really interesting places I worked were in the countries of the former Soviet Union when the societies were transitioning after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it was, as you might imagine, it was very exhausting work. And what we were doing was literally redesigning the teacher training systems in the various countries in Russia and the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. I was not doing this all by myself, I do want to say that. And On one particular trip, so what we were doing was we were doing workshops for teachers in how to facilitate active learning and critical thinking with their students, and to try to get these to be, the curriculum to be inculcated in the schools of education in the different countries. And I had the following experience, which was, a really, life-changing experience for me. I flew to the country of Estonia. Anybody here from Estonia? It sometimes happens. Oh well, it's a lovely country, all the way at the top of the world. And I got there, and we were going to do workshops the very next morning with groups of teachers, and I was tired. It was a long flight, and I had to be up and in my best teaching mode the next morning, and I was jet lagged and I was tired, and I was actually thinking, why is it that I do this again? Why did I travel all the way around the world, and is this really worth it? And so the next morning, when the teachers assembled, with my eagle eye, my eagle pedagogic eye, I spotted a guy. And I said, uh-oh, this guy is going to give me trouble. He was an older gentleman, and I was saying to my colleagues yesterday, he was an older gentleman then. He's probably younger than I am now, but he was an older gentleman. And he had this frown on his face. And I said, and so here's someone who'd grown up in a communist society for his whole life, and I said, this guy is going to give me trouble. He's not going to be interested in learning about active learning, critical thinking. He's going to disrupt the whole group. And he sat there all morning with his arms folded and just reinforcing my why do I do this? And so when we broke for lunch, we came back, and he wasn't there. And I said to myself, boy, you can sure spot them. You knew that he wasn't going to be interested in this. And somebody told me that he had an emergency at his school, but he promised to be back the next morning. And I said to myself, he will not be back. I will never see him again. He wasn't interested in this. And good that he's not here, because he won't disrupt everybody else. Well, lo and behold, the next morning, there he was. And I was surprised, and not necessarily pleased, but I was surprised. And we were doing this critical incident exercise about learning styles, and everybody was saying what the last thing they learned, how they learned it, why they learned it, and why it was important to them. And I thought to myself, this guy is going to say, he's not learned anything, and skip him or something like that. And when we went around the table, and it came for his turn, and this man stood up, and tears welled in his eyes. And he said, before I can tell you what I learned and how I learned it, I have to give you the context. You have to understand that for 50 years, I hadn't learned anything new. And for 50 years, I had nothing to bring to my students. And yesterday, what we learned and what I learned how to do and what I can now bring back to my students, you have absolutely no idea how meaningful that is and how much that will mean to my students. And tears were coming down his face. And that was my moment, and that's when I said there is absolutely nothing more important than teaching, though leadership is second only to classroom teaching among school-related factors. And that's why we do what we do, and that's why Teaching Matters is such an incredibly important organization, and that's why I am so deeply honored to have this award. Thank you so much.